Denzel Washington stood up and walked off live television right after Steven Coar made a calculated and explosive accusation. But what exactly had Coar said, and why did Denzel refuse to sit there and take it? Denzel wasn't unfamiliar with tough conversations. A former intelligence advisor turned public advocate, he had faced down congressional panels, hostile journalists, and powerful corporate lobbies. But tonight felt different. Off. The audience at The Late Show with Steven Coar was electric, buzzing with anticipation as the lights dimmed and the camera swept across the stage. Denzel adjusted his charcoal blazer as Coar smirked at him from across the table. Leaning in with his signature smug grin, Coar didn't waste time. "Denzel, let's talk about corruption." Denzel arched an eyebrow. "That's a broad subject." Coar let out a theatrical chuckle, shaking his head. "Oh, don't play coy. You've spent years speaking on behalf of power players in Washington. Don't you think the American people deserve better?" Denzel folded his hands calmly. "I've always spoken truth to power. Whether people agree with my message or not, my record stands. It speaks for itself." Coar scoffed. "Does it? Because a lot of people, and I mean people with a conscience, think you've spent your life defending the guilty, not the just." A low murmur swept through the audience. Denzel's jaw tensed for a moment, but he didn't flinch. "That's a loaded claim, Steven. If you have real evidence of wrongdoing, present it. Otherwise, you're just playing theater." Coar's smirk widened. "Oh, I thought you'd never ask." Suddenly, the screens behind them lit up. Headlines, opinion pieces, articles flashing accusations, all carefully selected to damage Denzel's credibility. Claims he had shielded corruption, edited to fit a narrative. The audience gasped. Some laughed nervously, others whispered. Denzel's expression remained unreadable, but inside he was boiling. Coar leaned back, feigning innocence. "Just a coincidence, I'm sure." Denzel exhaled slowly. "You're not here for a conversation. You came with a script, a performance." Coar laughed mockingly. "So I'm the villain now? You're the one on trial here." "Figuratively speaking, of course." Denzel sat up straighter, his voice measured and razor-sharp. "No, Steven, I think you are." The room fell silent. Coar's grin flickered. Denzel continued, his voice low and unwavering. "This isn't an interview. It's an ambush, and I won't play that game." He stood, pushing his chair back in one smooth motion. The crowd gasped. Coar raised his hands in mock surrender. "Whoa, where are you going? We're just getting started." Denzel turned toward him, his voice echoing in the silent studio. "You didn't invite me here to speak. You brought me here to be judged. By you, by a studio, by headlines. But I don't answer to you, Steven." The cameras were still rolling. The audience, trained to cheer for Coar's takedowns, sat frozen. Tension suffocated the room. Coar forced a laugh. "Come on, Denzel, don't be so dramatic. It's just a spirited conversation." Denzel scoffed. "This isn't a conversation. It's a setup, and you know it." Murmurs again from the audience. Coar, sensing control slipping, shifted to sarcasm. "Echelons," his old playbook. "Oh, so now you're the victim?" he sneered. Steven Coar leaned forward again, his smirk returning. "I thought tough guys like you could handle a little heat." Denzel crossed his arms steady. "Heat is one thing. A full-blown smear campaign is another." Then, without warning, he turned and looked straight into the camera, addressing not just the studio, but millions watching at home. "America," he said, voice calm but cutting. "This is how they work. They don't debate your ideas. They don't challenge your principles. They dismantle your name, your dignity, your history." The audience gasped. Even Coar blinked. Denzel's voice never wavered. "This isn't about me. This is about anyone who refuses to play along. If they can do this to me on live television, what do you think they'll do to someone without a platform?" A hush fell. The usual format had crumbled. The guest wasn't just pushing back. He was taking over. Coar shifted in his seat, uncomfortable now. He laughed nervously, trying to pivot. "All right, folks, he said, forcing a smile. I think Denzel could use a little break. Maybe some water? Denzel raised an eyebrow. Is that your way of telling me to sit down and take it? Coar grinned again, trying to regain control. I just don't want you to leave before I get to my favorite part. He gestured toward the studio screen. Suddenly, the monitors behind them lit up. Breaking, secret FBI files leaked. Washington under investigation for alleged classified data breach. The audience gasped. Denzel narrowed his eyes at the screen, then turned slowly back toward Coar. His face was unreadable. Coar leaned in, savoring the moment. Care to explain that one, Denzel? Silence. Denzel stared him down. His heart was pounding, but his voice, when it came, was as steady as stone. He had two options: fight back here and now, or walk away and let the world decide for themselves. He chose the third. Control the moment. Denzel stepped back from his chair, then another step, still locking eyes with Coar, and without a single word he turned and walked off the stage. The audience erupted in chaos. Whoa, wait, Denzel, Coar shouted. Don't you want to clear this up? But Denzel didn't stop, didn't look back. He knew the truth. He knew who had leaked the story. And he knew this wasn't just a hit piece. This was a warning, and the real fight, it was just beginning. Backstage, the noise of the audience still echoed, muffled by the studio walls. Denzel's polished shoes moved swiftly across the floor. His jaw was tight. A familiar voice called out. Jasmine, his longtime chief of staff, rushed over. Denzel, what just happened in there? He didn't slow down. They set me up, he said flatly, and they just made the biggest mistake of their lives. Jasmine kept pace. That FBI headline, was that real? Are they actually investigating you? His expression hardened. No, that was a manufactured leak. Jasmine paled. Then who did it? Denzel paused, looked around, lowered his voice. Steven Coar doesn't have that kind of reach. He's just the delivery boy. Jasmine's voice dropped. Then who's pulling the strings? Denzel exhaled through his nose. That's what we're going to find out. Just then his phone buzzed. Unknown number. He hesitated, answered. Washington. A distorted voice slid through the line, cold, controlled. You should have stayed in your seat, Mr. Washington. Denzel froze. This wasn't Coar. This wasn't TV. Someone else was watching. The voice continued, icy and calculated. You think this was about a talk show? You have no idea what you just walked into. Jasmine noticed the color drain from Denzel's face. Who is it? She whispered. Denzel didn't answer. His grip tightened around the phone. What do you want? He demanded. A dark chuckle slithered through the line. It's not about what I want, Mr. Washington. It's about what comes next. The line went dead. Denzel stared at the dark screen in his hand, the last words from the caller still echoing in his head. Watch your back. The line had gone dead. He slowly lowered the phone. Jasmine stepped closer, grabbing his arm. Denzel, who was that? He looked down, his pulse thudding in his ears. Someone who isn't bluffing. His voice was low, cold, focused. That wasn't just a warning. That was a declaration of war. He wasn't rattled. He was ready. Denzel Washington stood in the dim hallway of the studio, his phone still in hand, the fluorescent lights buzzing overhead. Jasmine, his loyal aide, was staring at him, waiting for an answer. Who was that? She asked again, her voice tight with urgency. Denzel took a deep breath, centering himself. Someone who doesn't want the truth getting out. Jasmine swallowed hard. This is bad. The FBI headline. It was never about charges. That was a message. Denzel nodded slowly. They wanted me to sit there and take the hit. And when I didn't, they escalated. Jasmine looked around, clearly shaken. We need to go, now. Denzel adjusted his blazer and started moving toward the exit. But before they reached the doors, a wall of reporters surged forward. Mr. Washington, any comment on the FBI investigation? Are the allegations true? Why did you walk off the show? Denzel's jaw tightened. They had been waiting for him, just like it was planned. Jasmine stepped in front of him instinctively. No comment, but Denzel didn't stop. Instead, he turned to the cameras, his expression unreadable, but sharp as steel. His voice sliced through the noise. The American people should be asking themselves one question. Why did that breaking news conveniently appear at the exact moment I pushed back on national television? The crowd of reporters paused. Some looked down at their phones. Others exchanged wary glances. Denzel continued, gaze locked and voice unwavering. I'll tell you why. Because I refused to play along with a scripted takedown. And when that didn't work, he raised his phone. I got a warning. Microphone shot forward. A warning? From who? Denzel gave a tight smirk, but there was no humor in it. That's the real question, isn't it? And with that, he turned and walked straight toward the black SUV waiting at the curb. Jasmine followed, slamming the door behind them. Inside the vehicle, Jasmine turned to him, her face pale. That was risky. You just made yourself an even bigger target. Denzel stared out the window as the city lights blurred past. Good, Jasmine blinked. Good? His voice was firm. Because whoever's behind this just made their first move. He turned to her. Now it's my turn. Jasmine hesitated. But we don't even know who they are yet. Denzel's phone buzzed again. Another unknown number. This time he answered without hesitation. A calm, deliberate voice slid through the speaker. You should have just played along, Mr. Washington. Denzel's grip tightened. He knew that voice. And now he knew exactly who was behind it. Denzel sat stiffly in the back seat, the hum of the engine a faint echo beneath the weight of what he had just confirmed. It was Alan Mitchell, billionaire media mogul, empire builder, and now the man orchestrating the attack on him. Denzel leaned forward. I was wondering when you'd show up. A low chuckle came through the speaker. Denzel, you always move fast. Denzel's tone hardened. Is that why you planted the fake FBI story, just to keep me in line? Mitchell sighed, patronizing. Planted? No. Let's call it a strategic release. Denzel clenched in his jaw. You've spent your life controlling people, controlling the narrative, making sure no one dares to question you. Mitchell's voice lost its playfulness. And yet here you are, questioning me. Denzel didn't back down. I know you funded that entire production. I know you gave Coar those files. I know exactly what you're doing. A long pause. Then Mitchell's voice returned, colder. Do you have any idea who you're messing with, Denzel? Denzel's heart beat faster, but his voice remained like stone. Oh, I do, and I think you just made the biggest mistake of your life. Mitchell gave a soft chuckle, but it lacked confidence now. You always were a fighter, he said quietly. Let me give you some advice. Walk away while you still can. Denzel smirked. You think I'm scared of you? Mitchell's tone dropped like a blade. You should be. Denzel leaned forward, voice sharp. Is that a threat? Silence. Then Mitchell answered, his voice slow and final. No, that's a guarantee. The line went dead. Denzel slowly lowered the phone. Jasmine stared at him. What did he mean? She asked. Denzel tucked the phone away, eyes locked forward. It means we just made him nervous. Jasmine blinked. Isn't that bad? A small, knowing smile played at the edge of Denzel's lips. No, he said quietly. It's exactly what we needed. And yet, here you are, questioning me, Alan Mitchell said, his voice low and needling. But Denzel didn't back down. I know you funded the entire operation. I know you're the one who put those surveillance files in Coar's hands. Every move, every word, it all leads back to you. There was a long pause. Then Mitchell let out a slow, deliberate breath. Do you have any idea who you're dealing with, Denzel? Denzel's pulse quickened, but his voice remained steady. I know exactly who you are, and I know you just made the biggest mistake of your life. A soft chuckle drifted through the line, but this time there was an edge. You always were a fighter, Mitchell mused, but let me offer you a piece of advice. Walk away while you still can. Denzel smirked slightly. You think I'm scared of you? Mitchell's tone upped several degrees. You should be. Denzel leaned in slightly, gripping the phone tighter. Was that a threat, Alan? Silence. Then Mitchell responded with a voice as cold as steel. It's a guarantee. The line went dead. Denzel slowly lowered the phone, staring at the blank screen. Jasmine, still listening from the seat beside him, whispered, "What did he mean?" Denzel exhaled, slid the phone into his coat pocket, and answered evenly, "It means we just made him nervous." Jasmine blinked. "Isn't that a bad thing?" A knowing smile tugged at the corner of Denzel's mouth. "No," he said. "It's exactly what we needed." Alan Mitchell had just revealed his hand, and Denzel Washington was about to make his next move. The SUV glided through the streets of Washington, the skyline a blur of shadow and lights. Denzel sat in silence, replaying the call in his head. "You should be scared. It's a guarantee." Jasmine shifted beside him, clearly unsettled. "Denzel, what if he's serious?" He turned to her, voice calm and absolute. "Oh, he's serious. And that's exactly why we move now." Jasmine furrowed her brow. "Move how? What do you mean?" Denzel pulled out his phone and tapped a secure number. It rang twice before a familiar voice answered. "Washington." Denzel exhaled slightly. "Thompson, we have a problem." FBI Special Agent Daniel Thompson, Denzel's longtime ally, one of the few people in D.C. he trusted, was already bracing for it. "Let me guess," Thompson said. "Mitchell?" "He called me directly." A pause. "That's bold," Thompson replied. "Too bold. He's getting desperate. He's trying to rattle me, force me to back down." Thompson's tone darkened. "I don't like this. Mitchell doesn't make threats. He erases people." Jasmine's eyes widened, but Denzel remained stone still. "Then we hit first." Thompson sighed. "Easier said than done." "We need something concrete," Denzel said. "Something that connects him directly to the setup. Have you found anything?" There was hesitation. "We're close," Thompson admitted, "but we need more." Denzel exhaled through his nose. "Then let's get it." Thompson's voice grew cautious. "I just picked up intel. Mitchell's holding a private meeting tonight at his estate. High-level media figures, political fixers, the whole power circle. If there's ever been a place to catch him in the act, that's it." Denzel's eyes sharpened. "Then I need to be there." Jasmine turned toward him, stunned. "What? No, that's insane." There was silence on the line. Then Thompson said slowly, "Denzel, do you really understand what you're suggesting?" "Yes," Denzel answered. His voice was firm, focused. "I get in. I get the proof. I walk out before Mitchell even knows I was there." Another pause. "This isn't a live interview, Denzel. This is a criminal operation." "I know." His eyes locked forward, burning with a conviction. "That's exactly why I have to go." Jasmine grabbed his arm, eyes wide. "Denzel, that's suicide. He just threatened you. If you walk into his home, you may not walk out." He turned to her, unwavering. "If we don't stop him now, he'll keep doing this. To me, to others, to anyone who dares to speak." Jasmine swallowed hard. "How would we even get in?" Thompson answered, "I've got a contact inside. She can get you in as staff, but it's risky." "She can get you in as staff," Thompson said, "but it's risky." Denzel smirked faintly. "Risk is my specialty." Thompson sighed, the weight of the moment pressing down. "I had a feeling you'd say that. All right, Washington, if you're going in, we do this right." Denzel straightened his shoulders. He wasn't afraid, because he knew one thing for certain. Alan Mitchell thought he was setting a trap, but by the time the night was over, he'd be the one caught inside it. Denzel adjusted the crisp white sleeve of his server's uniform as he stepped through the towering entrance of Alan Mitchell's private estate. Above him, a chandelier glowed like a halo of ice, cold, elegant, and vaguely threatening, casting long shadows across a room filled with suits, diamonds, whispers, and danger. Media moguls, political puppeteers, billionaire power brokers. They moved like predators dressed as peacemakers, swirling their drinks and their agendas with equal precision. And at the center of it all, Alan Mitchell. Denzel's eyes locked on him, calm, collected, untouchable. He adjusted the discreet earpiece in his right ear. Thompson's voice came through, low and steady. "You're inside. Keep your head down. Stick to the plan." Denzel exhaled slowly, scanning the room as he picked up a silver tray of champagne. "Copy that," Jasmine's voice crackled through next. Denzel, I still think this is insane. Denzel smirked as he moved between the guests. Insane it would be letting men like him keep running the show. He weaved through the ballroom, inconspicuous, listening, recording. It didn't take long. Near the marble fireplace, a small group had gathered, leaning in, whispering like conspirators. Denzel adjusted his path, pretending to refill a guest's drink. Then he heard it. Washington was a mistake. He froze. Another voice, deeper, sharper. He should have gone down with Coar. We underestimated him. Then Mitchell's own voice joined in, casual and cold. He won't be a problem much longer. Denzel's pulse accelerated. Thompson's voice hit his earpiece. That's it. That's the proof we need. Get closer. Denzel inhaled deeply, took one careful step forward, and Mitchell's gaze snapped toward him. Piercing, direct. Denzel felt it instantly. He'd been made. Mitchell's eyes narrowed, his smirk curled. He knew. Denzel pivoted hard, moving back toward the staff entrance. Thompson's voice came fast and sharp. Abort, he's on to you. Mitchell raised one hand, barely a flick of the wrist, but his security saw it. Denzel didn't hesitate. He dropped the tray, slipping through the crowd as quickly and silently as he could. Footsteps, fast ones, started behind him. He broke through the kitchen doors, brushing past startled staff, heading straight for the exit. Then a hand, tight, strong, closed around his wrist. He spun. Alan Mitchell. Standing there tall and composed, his eyes cold, his smile, cruel. Leaving so soon, Mr. Washington? His tone was smooth, almost amused. Denzel didn't back down. You're making a mistake, Alan. Mitchell leaned in slightly, still gripping his wrist. No, Denzel, you did. Mitchell's grip on Denzel's wrist was firm, his voice almost amused. I'll give you this, Washington. You're bold, but boldness only takes you so far. Denzel didn't flinch. So what's your plan, Alan? Have your people drag me out the back door and hope I disappear? Mitchell chuckled, shaking his head. Oh, that would be far too easy. See, Denzel, I don't need to silence you. He leaned in, his voice dropping to a whisper. I already did. Denzel felt a cold twist in his gut. Mitchell gestured to a nearby security man who handed him a phone. Mitchell turned the screen toward Denzel. A breaking news alert blazed across it. Denzel Washington under federal investigation for wiretapping. Alan Mitchell's private event. Denzel's breath caught. Mitchell's smirk deepened. You walked right into it, Denzel. The moment you set foot on my property, I had you. Denzel clenched his jaw, mind racing. Mitchell had planted the story before Denzel even arrived. The press was already running with it. In his earpiece, Jasmine's panicked voice crackled. Denzel, the media's everywhere. They're calling you a criminal. Denzel inhaled sharply, fighting to stay calm. Mitchell tilted his head, savoring the moment. What's wrong? Usually you have a comeback for everything. But Denzel recognized the tactic. He'd seen men like Alan Mitchell before. They wanted you to panic. They wanted you to believe you'd lost before you even had a chance to fight. He wasn't about to give Mitchell that satisfaction. Instead, Denzel straightened his shoulders, meeting Mitchell's eyes with a cool smirk. Alan, he said, voice calm and clear, did you really think I'd come in here unprepared? For just a moment, Mitchell's eyes flickered, just enough for Denzel to know that he'd landed a blow. Denzel lifted his chin. You've spent your life manipulating the narrative, but there's just one problem. He leaned in, lowering his voice. I'm better at it than you are. Mitchell's smile faded. Denzel pulled out his own phone, tapped a button, and turned the screen to face Mitchell. A live feed was playing, Mitchell's own voice caught by a hidden microphone, admitting to orchestrating the setup. The damning evidence was already out in the world. Denzel watched as Mitchell's face paled. Smile, Alan, Denzel whispered. You're on air. Jasmine's voice erupted in Denzel's earpiece. Denzel, it's working. The feed is trending everywhere. People are turning on him. Mitchell's hands clenched into fists, his empire unraveling in real time. But Denzel didn't wait. He turned on his heel and strode away, heart pounding, leaving Mitchell shouting orders behind him. Denzel walked through the grand hallway of the estate, his footsteps echoing on the marble. He didn't look back, not at Mitchell, not at the chaos. He delivered the fatal blow, and the world was watching. Jasmine's voice came through, breathless. Denzel, it's happening. Reporters, networks, everyone's demanding answers from Mitchell. His own allies are abandoning him. Denzel's lips curled into a satisfied smirk. Good. He reached the exit, pushed open the heavy doors, and stepped out into the cool night. The scene was chaos, reporters, flashing cameras, security guards scrambling. He had exposed Alan Mitchell in real time, and now the world was eating it up. A throng of journalists surged toward him, microphones outstretched. Mr. Washington, did Alan Mitchell try to set you up? Is it true he's been running an illegal surveillance operation? Denzel stopped, turned, and faced the cameras, his expression composed, his voice steady. He didn't need to say much. Mitchell had destroyed himself. All I'll say is this, Denzel stated firmly, when powerful people think they're untouchable, they get sloppy. And tonight, he let the sentence hang, the world filling in the rest. The world saw the truth. The news exploded with questions, but Denzel Washington was already striding toward the waiting SUV. Jasmine sat inside, grinning ear to ear, as Denzel slid into the seat beside her. You did it? Jasmine said, shaking her head in disbelief. You actually did it. Denzel exhaled, finally letting his head rest back against the seat for the first time all night. Yeah, a beat passed, then a slow, knowing smirk. And I'm just getting started. Back in the burning ruins of his empire, Alan Mitchell stood frozen, fists clenched, helpless as the walls collapsed around him. One of his security men hesitated at his side. Sir, the FBI just arrived. They have a warrant. Mitchell's jaw locked in defeat. As the FBI agents stormed in, Mitchell's anger hardened to ice. He had lost the battle, but the war in his mind wasn't over. Later, Denzel sat in the dim glow of an FBI safe house, his hands wrapped around a steaming cup of coffee. The adrenaline was fading, replaced by the weight of what he'd just done. Across from him, Jasmine's eyes darted between her phone and Denzel. It's everywhere, she said quietly. The footage, the audio, Mitchell's completely exposed. Denzel nodded, exhaustion heavy in his bones. And what about him? Jasmine hesitated. The FBI took him in an hour ago, but he's already made a call. Denzel's stomach tightened. To who? Before Jasmine could answer, Agent Thompson stepped into the room, his face grim. You were right, he said quietly. Mitchell had backup plans. Denzel's fingers tightened around his cup. How bad? Thompson pulled out his phone, tapping the screen. A breaking news alert flashed. Alan Mitchell claims political persecution. Files lawsuit against Denzel Washington and the FBI. Denzel exhaled sharply. Jasmine's eyes widened. You've got to be kidding me. He's playing the victim. Thompson nodded. He's spinning it, using all his media contacts, claiming the government and political enemies. He glanced at Denzel. Are conspiring against him. Denzel leaned back, staring at the screen. So he thinks he can win in the court of public opinion. Thompson's expression hardened. This isn't just about optics anymore. He has real connections. If he walks away from this, he won't just come for you next time. Denzel finished the thought for him. He'll destroy everything. A heavy silence filled the room. Then Denzel straightened, resolve lighting his eyes. Then we finish it. Jasmine blinked. What do you mean? Denzel's voice was steady, determined. We don't just expose Mitchell. We expose everyone connected to him. Thompson hesitated. That's a big move, Denzel. You're talking about taking down an entire network. Denzel nodded, which is why we do it now, while the world is watching. Jasmine looked from Denzel to Thompson. How? Denzel pulled out his phone, tuning into a major news network. The anchor was already discussing the scandal. The world's attention fixed. He lifted his chin. We tell the truth, he said, loud enough that no one could cover it up. In a holding room, Alan Mitchell sat in a rumpled suit, a lawyer whispering about motions and emergency hearings. Mitchell's mind was elsewhere, a faint smirk on his lips. Let's see how far he's willing to go, Mitchell thought. Soon after, Denzel sat before a national news camera, the world watching. He took a deep breath. Then he told everything. Names, deals, corruption. The entire web Alan Mitchell had spent decades building. In minutes, it all burned. The next day's headlines blared, "Mitchell Empire collapses, mass investigations underway." Denzel Washington had done what no one else dared. He'd beaten the system, and this time, there was no coming back. 3 weeks later, Mitchell's empire was in ruins. He was indicted on multiple charges, his network dissolved, his allies vanished. And Denzel Washington? He was still standing. As he walked through the doors of a new law office, his phone buzzed. A message from Agent Thompson. "It's over. You won." Denzel smiled. Not just the smile of victory, but of revolution. He hadn't just won. He'd changed the game. Forever.